It's Levack and Goss on 104.5 The Team.
Filling in for Goss today, Zach By with us, and now lots of crazy stuff going on all of a sudden. Jim Boeheim says on the Dan Patrick show yesterday that he is considering or has considered or is possibly done coaching, could be as early as this year. Mike Waters covers college basketball for Syracuse.com. Mike, do you believe that this could be the final season for Boeheim?
I kind of doubt it. I think he said that on Dan's show in response to a couple days where the whole succession plan here was called into question. There was a story on SportsIllustrated.com, SI.com, that suggested that Jim had gone to administration here and had lobbied to coach longer than the original plan, which would have taken him through next year. That he wanted to go further. And I just think with all that kind of swirling around, he wanted to, in a way, by throwing more mystery into it, he takes control over it again. And he is the ultimate contrarian. That's his style, always has been. I don't take anything he says to the bank, not in terms of this, not until he comes out and says, this is my last year. Well, I believe it is his last year. It might be mine. I think he's just kind of throwing a little shade onto the whole story that earlier this week was a big deal around here.
Mike, what is the tone around the administration when it comes to Jim Boeheim? Is it something where they hope he stays forever, or are they in the back of their minds looking forward to the day that he leaves?
I haven't gotten either impression from anybody that it was essentially Jim's call back in March of 2015 when he, at a press conference, said that he intended to coach for 3 more years. Later that summer, after the hire of a new athletic director, the chancellor came out, and for the first time ever, the university put on paper and out in public that this was the plan, that Jim would coach through the 2018 season, and that Mike Hopkins was the successor. We had always assumed that Mike Hopkins was the successor. Jim Boeheim on occasion would say as much, unless you asked him directly, in which case he wouldn't say. But again, the ultimate contrarian. But that was a year and a half ago in the summer of 2015 that Chancellor Severud said that. John Wildhack, after being named the new AD here just last summer, has a couple of times, including as recently as a week ago, had said that plan is still the plan that's in place.
Mike
no one
Waters,
has ever said that we hope he leaves here sooner. No one has ever said that they hope he hangs on for 5, 6 more years. Everyone's always said this is the plan, and that's the way it is.
Mike Waters with us right now. You can follow him on Twitter at Mike Waters, SYR, covers college hoops for Syracuse.com. So, Mike, I had the crazy scheme in my brain that, you've got a Syracuse team that it's not perfect, but it seems to be able to rise to the occasion at certain times. If I'm Boeheim, do I put out the old, oh, it's the last year for me, boys. Let's go as far as we can go?
I don't think that would help on the court during a game. I think it's great for us guys like you, guys like me. We get to write about it. But generally, the old win one for the Gipper thing lasts as long as the opening tap, especially in a game like basketball. Maybe in football where you can, fire guys up and maybe they run a little harder into each other. But in basketball, it's what was the old John Wooden thing? Be quick, but don't hurry. You can't do that if you're so fired up that you can't see straight. So you have to play with energy, but you also have to play within yourself in basketball. So I've never really believed a whole lot of the pregame pep talks help in basketball. Basketball is all about mental focus and hustle. It's not about overhyping somebody so much that they run through a brick wall for you.
Mike, earlier in the show, Jeff and I were talking about the post-Boeheim era. And you look at a school like Syracuse, who for, 40-plus years now has been led by the same coach. You could argue that the university and the basketball program is as tied into the coach in its identity as much as any other program in the country. Is there a great feeling of angst from the Syracuse community for the post-Boeheim era and all the unknowns that come along with that?
It depends on who you talk to. I think there's certain sections of the community that are looking forward to not seeing zone defense. And, they criticize Boeheim at every turn, which to me is ridiculous. Look at what the man has done on the floor. I think there are some people who are like, listen, at some point it's going to have to be handed over, and there's some people who take a pragmatic point of view that the longer he does stay, eventually it is going to hurt recruiting. But I think the one reason it hasn't really hurt recruiting so far is that they did have an established plan of succession in place, that unlike other schools, when you had a legend getting ready to retire, and the whole, well, who's going to replace him, who's going to be the coach, was something that could be used against them in recruiting. For Syracuse, listen, at some point they're going to have to recruit to a school that doesn't have a Hall of Famer on the bench. But at least for now and for like the last couple of years and for this year and the one after that, they go into recruits' living rooms and they say, listen, here's your coach and here's your future coach right here. And your future coach is recruiting you and committing to you, and you know him, and he's established a rapport, and you like Mike Hopkins, but you're also dealing with Boeheim. The thing that's going to be really hard for Syracuse is when Boeheim does retire, that you lose that little recruiting carrot of telling a kid, you're going to come and you're going to play for a Hall of Famer who's won a national title and whose name you know so well. That's going to go away. But there's nothing you can do about it. Whenever he does step aside, you have to deal with that. Rushing it doesn't help. Putting it off doesn't help. You'll deal with it when the time comes.
Mike Waters of Syracuse.com with us right here on 104.5 The Team. So, Mike, this particular team, I'm a little drunk on the win over Duke. I thought it was a great game. How far can this team go this year?
Well, I don't know exactly, because if you had put that question to me last year, and you could have even given me 2 more weeks to weigh it, and going into the NCAA tournament, playing in a first-round game against Dayton, you would have said, Mike, how far can they go? I said, well, they can probably beat Dayton, but they're going to lose to Michigan State on Sunday. And then they don't even end up facing Michigan State. Middle Tennessee State knocks off the number 2 seed. And then the next thing you know, it's 2 weeks later, and I'm covering a Final Four team. I never would have suspected that. Now, this year's team, I can't see them going beyond the first weekend until I think to myself, you never know. And when you see them able to beat Duke and Virginia and Florida State, and not to discount, and don't discount the ability to win on the road at Clemson, and even at a place like North Carolina State. This team's starting to show that, it can compete. It can compete with virtually anybody in the country. And I tell you what, there's nobody out there who wants to see Syracuse show up in their bracket.
Hey.
With Boeheim on the bench and the zone on the floor, listen, it's not a deep team, but it's a team that can put 4 bona fide scorers out there. Got 4 different guys who have the ability to go off on you for 22 points. With Leiden, Andrew White, John Gillen, and Tyus Battle. This is not a team you want to mess with. Would I predict them to go to the Final Four again? No. I don't even know if I'm going to predict them to go beyond the first weekend, but it's not a team you want to mess around with either.
Mike, I totally will co-sign that no one wants Syracuse in their portion of the bracket. But before we let you go, let me ask, I'm assuming you were at the game this past week against Duke. When you compare that environment and that finish to anything else you've ever seen in the Carrier Dome, where does it stack up?
Okay, I'm glad you pinpointed me to the Carrier Dome, because that helps. Because some of the greatest finishes I've ever seen have happened, in NCAA tournament games or on the road. In the Dome, first of all, the atmosphere was unbelievable. And I've seen atmosphere like that before. When they played Villanova in 2010 and set what was then an on-campus record crowd, and in a game that they knew if they won that game, they'd be number 1 in the country 2 days later. That was amazing. Games against Georgetown back in 1990. That was the day that John Thompson got 3 technicals and got ejected. The first couple games that Duke's played up here in 2015 and 16, or 2014 and 15, excuse me. So the atmosphere was on par with all those. In terms of a last-second shot, I don't have anything else to compare it to. I really don't. The burst of noise that the crowd made, the explosion, was unlike anything I had ever heard. I had heard a crowd roar before, at the Carrier Dome, especially when you have 35,000 people there on some occasions. I'd heard loud, but this was a different kind of loud. And it was the explosion. It's the only way I can describe it, that the crowd made when that ball hit off the backboard and went through that net. It was unbelievable.
Mike Waters, Syracuse.com. Follow him on Twitter at Mike Waters, SYR. We appreciate your time making some sense of the great contrarian, Mr. Boeheim.
Zach, you have a great day. Thanks for having me on.
All right, thanks, brother.